What does your work consist of in general terms?
Yes, so in the morning, one of the things that I do is I go out on the street in Whiteclay for ministry. I walk the streets. I try and come without much of an agenda. I just spend time with the people on the streets as relationships develop. The rest of my work naturally flows out of that, whether it be praying for people, encouraging people, sometimes helping people get into treatment. Oftentimes I bandage up wounds because of the situation where people don't want to go to the hospital for fear of being arrested. I bandage up wounds to keep them from being infected. And I just offer any spiritual support. Sometimes I feed people, not very often.
Mr. Newman, is this work you do essentially every day?
Just about, normally it's about 3 to 4 days a week.
But you're in and through Whiteclay every day?
Just about.
Is there a population of street people in Whiteclay?
Yes, there is.
And is that a population of street people you come to know by name?
Most of them.
And Mr. Newman, are those persons who are street people in Whiteclay persons who you know to consume alcohol?
Yes, they are.
And do you know the source of that alcohol?
The 4 beer stores in Whiteclay.
Do you also observe vehicular traffic from the north, from South Dakota into Whiteclay, and observe the behaviors of persons who drive into town?
Just about constantly.
And do you observe that persons drive into town and stop in the village of Whiteclay to do some business of a particular kind?
Yes.
What is the most prominent kind of business you observe?
Buying beer.
And what do you observe about the people who buy that beer and drive in to patronize one of those stores?
They drive in from the reservation side, buy their beer, and drive back.
I wanted to talk just a little bit about the geography, and because of the constraints of the hearing room here, I'm going to ask you, did you and I have an opportunity to speak yesterday?
Yes, we did.
And during that time, did we have an opportunity to look at some photographs?
Yes, we did.
If Mr. Snyder doesn't object, and in the interest of expediency, I'd like to identify some photographs by exhibit number for the commission to look at its leisure, and just ask you to confirm, if you would, that we looked at these together, and you can tell us that exhibits 6, 38, 43, and 102 are photographs of the street side or front of the applicants for licenses here.
Yes.
I'll offer exhibits 6, 38, 42, and 102.
Make sure you draw exhibit 6, number 38, and exhibit 102, correct?
42 and 102.
42. Just can't remember, I told you math and drums. Mr. Snyder?
Sorry, what exhibit 6, 42, 102, what did I miss?
38.
38. I object on foundation and relevance. I can't pull up those pictures spaced that far apart exactly, but unless they show evidence of some actual crime in Nebraska, I don't think they relate to the issue of law enforcement in Nebraska.
They identify the establishments just for purposes of identification.
There are those pictures of the outside.
That's right.
Moving off of that, did you take those photographs, Mr. Newman?
I did not.
But you are aware that they are true and accurate representation of the 4 locations in the unincorporated village where you reside?
Yes, we went through them yesterday.
Are your officers limited value that they just show
That's
that
correct. That's all.
Any objection on that, Mr. Snyder?
To show that they're the stores?
Yeah, that's it.
Exhibit 6, 38, 42, and 42, and I'm sorry, 6, 38, 42, and 102 are received.
I also have exhibits 141 and 142, which are an aerial image that shows Whiteclay, the state line, and the law enforcement center that the Attorney General identified. That's 141. Exhibit 142 is a roadway map that shows the state line, the city of Pine Ridge's boundaries or city limits, the location of Whiteclay, and some highways and roads. And I would offer those simply to identify the geographic area.
Any objection to that limitation, Mr. Snyder? No. Exhibits 141 and 142 are received.
Thank you. Now, we can talk, I think, without the constraints of those photographs, but I'd like to ask you in general terms, sir, you told us what you do on a daily basis, and you told us that you get to know the street people. Is it a population that is persistently present, or is it transitory?
Some people are there just about year-round. Some are in for just a day to drink and then leave.
And you get to know some of both.
Yes.
Can you tell us, you mentioned that sometimes you bind up their wounds, is that true?
That is correct.
What kinds of wounds?
Oftentimes there's gashes from falls when they were drunk or when they're going to pick aluminum cans at the dump just across the border. I also have bandage wounds from fights, including a knife wound.
Have you intervened in an effort to prevent fights?
Many times.
And Mr. Newman, have you observed whether the persons with whom you have found yourself as the interviewer have presented the appearance of being intoxicated?
Definitely.
Are you able to identify an intoxicated person pretty readily?
After 2 years on the streets, yes.
Is violence within the area that is known as Whiteclay something that you see on a regular basis?
Yes.
How regularly?
I would say I see it about half of the days that I am out on the street. That is definitely not a very good representation because I go out in the mornings for the sake of my own safety and being able to communicate with people when people are less intoxicated.
Have you come to know that the danger accelerates as the day wears on?
Definitely.
Too dangerous for you to be out at night in Whiteclay?
Yes.
How often do you see law enforcement in Whiteclay?
I would say that I see them about once a week.
And would that be what agencies? State Patrol, Sheriff, what agencies?
Most often it's the sheriff, sometimes state patrol.
They're about once a week.
Yes.
Have you had occasion yourself to make calls for law enforcement?
Yes, I have.
And on what kinds of occasions do you do that?
That I can recall readily, I think I can think of maybe 5 occasions.
And tell us about the responses. Did law enforcement respond to your call?
For my first call to 911, which was for a diabetic seizure, there was no response that I'm aware of. For another call to a drunk driver, the sheriff came in town, drove past the vehicle that I reported. The vehicle went to the reservation side. I did try and get the officer to pull over a different drunk driver who had shown some signs of significant intoxication, and he did not arrest that man. Then on another occasion, I called the police on a fight, which calling the police put me in direct jeopardy, but the police did not respond for about over 40 minutes. Actually, I don't know if I should say that because I wasn't in town. I drove through a little bit later, so I don't want to put that on record.
You're not sure of the time?
Yeah, but it was definitely too late to come to my aid, and had it not been for someone who pulled over and talked to me and intervened, I would have been beaten very badly.
Mr. Newman, can I ask you some questions to switch just a little bit? I want to ask you a little bit about Whiteclay itself. You live there, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you live at what you call the Lakota Folk Center. Are there others who live there?
Yes, there are.
How many persons?
2 others.
So a total of 3 live at Lakota Hope.
Yes.
How many people known to you live in this unincorporated area called Whiteclay?
The most recent number that I've heard and that I believe is correct is 9.
So the three of you comprise a third of the population.
Yes, we do.
Do any of you consume beer?
No, not that I know of.
Do you know of the other 6 persons who are residents of Whiteclay?
I know Junior Denny. He lives in town. He has 2 sons. And then there is a woman who I've not met. I don't think I've met her, but I'm told that she lives behind C&R Drive-In.
And so did you know Mr. Denny, and he has 2 children who live with him, sons?
Yes.
Is he married?
Yes, he's married.
All right, and to be clear, does his wife live with him?
Yes.
So the Denny's account for 4 of these persons, is that
Yes.
correct? So the Lakota 3 plus the Denny 4 are 7/9 of the population.
Yes.
Are the Denny offspring children?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, do they consume beer?
No.
And what about the Denny's? Do you have any observation about whether they consume beer?
I believe they consume some.
All right. And have you ever seen them in a state of intoxication?
I have not.
Have you ever seen any indication that they might consume more than 1 beer per day or less?
I don't know if I can speak to that.
I'm sorry, they talked at the same time, so I didn't hear the objection.
I object on foundation.
And I'm sustaining the objection. He's already, he has a marginal connection with their drinking habits.
Do you know of any resident of Whiteclay, any resident of Whiteclay, who is a citizen of Nebraska, who consumes beer to intoxication?
Object on foundation.
Question is, do you know?
We overrule the, hold on a second. I gotta make these things called rulings. I'm gonna overrule the objection. It's asking if he knows.
I do not know. Repeat the question again, please.
Do you know of a resident of Whiteclay who is a citizen of Nebraska who consumes beer to intoxication?
I do not.
Mr. Newman.
Just a second, I want to clarify that. You don't know, does he not know the answer to the question, or is he trying to answer the question?
Okay, good. All right. Do you know such a person, yes or no?
I do not know such a person.
Thank you.
Do you observe persons coming into and going out of these 4 stores and applying for renewal of their licenses?
Yes, I do.
And do you observe the ethnicity of their customers?
Yes.
What can you tell the commission about that ethnicity, sir?
I'm going to object on foundation. I don't think you can tell the ethnicity of the person by just looking at it.
I'll clear that up with some more.
Yeah, I'm gonna sustain that. I think that's.
Are you able to tell the ethnicity of these persons by looking at them?
It's fairly easy.
All right, and what are the distinguishing characteristics that permit you to identify their ethnicity?
Oh boy, there's many. Hair and skin color. There's certain facial features too. I don't know if it's easy to describe here and now.
All right, and what is that ethnicity that you observe based on those features?
I'm going to object on foundation. He's still just trying to describe ethnicity based on the look of the person.
Yeah, I'm gonna sustain that.
I offer to prove that he would say that more than 99% of the customers of these stores are Native American Lakota people. More than 99%.
I believe you could answer that question without, get that information out, Mr. Donald, without
I'm
odd looks.
offering that proof.
That's never fine, yeah.
All right. Do you observe whether the persons who patronize the stores enter the store? Well, let's talk about their pattern of behavior. You said you're out in the morning. You
Yes.
observe that people on the street consume alcohol in the morning?
Yes, they do.
What is the pattern of their behavior?
They usually go up to vehicles and ask for change. Once they have enough money for a beer, they will go and buy a beer. Then they will consume that beer, and then they will repeat that cycle.
To what point?
To the point where a very large portion of them pass out on the streets.
I'm going to object on foundation and relevance. This is very, very general testimony with absolutely no specifics about who is consuming it, where they're consuming it, whether the retailers have violated any laws whatsoever by these people consuming in canned food.
Mr. Dolan?
Well, I can lay some more foundation about who these people are.
You know, I'm going to overrule the objection. I believe that the witness has testified that he knows everything he observes. He's being asked for his general observations. He's not alleging a crime or violation. So I'm going to overrule for that.
Do you know this street population?
The vast majority.
Do you attempt to establish friendships with them?
Yes, I do.
Is it your objective to earn their trust with your current contact?
Yes, it is.
And is that a part of your effort to intervene?
Yes, it is.
You mentioned a diabetic seizure and you mentioned fights. We've talked about the law enforcement people. Can I ask you about a specific day? Do you remember March 29, 2016?
Yes, I do.
Is that a day that stands out in your memory as a person on the streets of Whiteclay?
It was fairly memorable.
What happened that day?
It is memorable because a lot happened that day. There were a variety of things. It was the aftermath of a knife fight that occurred on the premises of Arrowhead Inn. And so I was immediately, when I walked into the street, I was asked to go and bandage the knife wound from that fight, which I had bandaged once before the day previous, and the bandage had fallen off. So in finding that person, I found him, I bandaged up that wound. He mentioned another wound which I had also bandaged before, though he had told me that he had taken care of it the day previous. I took a look at it. He said his foot was tingling. It was a wound that had happened from when he had fallen while he was drunk. And I took off the bandage. The wound was very stinky. It was filled with pus at its center. It was green around the outside. I did my best to clean it because of the tingling, which indicated to me that it had reached to very deep and was affecting nerves. I asked him to go to the hospital, and after much convincing, I convinced him to go. In that instance, we also talked about the knife fight, where I learned from him.
I don't think you want to repeat what he said to you. He had to stop at you with what you said about the knife fight. And I'll ask another question if I may.
Okay.
Did you observe behaviors of persons with alcohol in their physical possession that day?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you observe, sir?
I observed, as I do every day, many people on the streets with open containers, many drinking. I also observed one man who was actually a good friend of mine from outside of Whiteclay, who had wound up in Whiteclay. He was in a vehicle drinking a can of beer.
Native person?
Yes.
Can I ask you about April 2 of 2016? Did you see an event on the streets of Whiteclay that day?
Which day?
April 2 of 2016.
April 2. Yes. So this was shortly after that day. This was when I was sitting on the porch and a man was walking kind of out from behind one of the buildings on the other side of the street, and a vehicle came ramming towards him in what appeared to be an attempt to run him over. he sidestepped the vehicle, after which the woman who was driving the vehicle, who a man next to me said was his girlfriend, went and hit him several times. He restrained himself and kept himself coming back.
You mean physically struck him with his hands or fists? As in beating him, is that what you mean?
Yes, she was beating him.
Was law enforcement present?
No law enforcement was present.
Did law enforcement come?
No law enforcement came.
During the course of the events you described throughout the day on March 29, 2016, was law enforcement present?
Not that I remember or am aware of.
I want to just ask you a few more specifics. Can I direct your attention to April 20, 2016? Did you observe specific occurrences on the streets of Whiteclay on that day?
Yes, this was one of the few times that I was out on the street late at night because I had to do some work in one of the buildings in Whiteclay. And I saw a man get out of a minivan parked at Jumping Eagles. He staggered into the building. I took a moment to watch through the window at the front of Jumping Eagles. The man stood there for a while, handed something to the man at the counter who was out of sight, but he handed it, put it on the counter. And then he made several grabs shortly after at the counter, as if he was attempting to pick up his change, but it was just several over-exaggerated, awkward gestures.
Was law enforcement present?
Yes, and the man walked out with beer.
Was law enforcement present?
No.
Did you know a woman named Sherry Wounded Foot?
I did not know her personally, no.
Are you aware that she died
Yes.
and was the perceived victim of murder?
Object on foundation.
Are you aware that she was the perceived, do you know whether she was the perceived victim of murder?
Object on foundation.
I'm going to overrule, but be very careful. I mean, public knowledge or where the allegation is defined, actual knowledge of the facts if he does not know.
I'm not going to go into those matters.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, so when you back. I'm going to overrule the objection, however, there's a, insofar as he's aware of what the public perception is in the community in which he resides, however, any specifics, that he does not have first-hand knowledge of should be excluded.
So this should be a yes or no question. Are you aware of the perception that Sherry Wounded Foot was murdered?
Yes, I am.
And are you aware of the perception that homicide occurred in Whiteclay?
I'm going to object on foundation. I mean, perception is not evidence.
No, but the next question will be, and I need this for foundation for it.
I'm going to overrule the limitation. Trying to read those numbers, Tom.
When is the first time after the death of Sherry Wounded Foot that you were aware of law enforcement being in Whiteclay for purposes associated with that investigation?
I got back from a trip a few days after the incident and was told as soon as I went out on the street.
You were told what? You were told of her death?
I was told of her death and the allegations.
But my question, I get that. My question now is, when did law enforcement show up?
I saw about a month after the fact, 5 vehicles came in they were state police, and they began to investigate and ask questions of the street people in Whiteclay.
All right. Aside from this last subject we've talked about, I've asked you about other episodes or events on specific days. Are you able to tell the Commission whether occurrences of the general type that you've described referring to specific days are within your routine experience on the streets of Whiteclay?
Could you repeat the question?
Are the experiences that you've described by reference to specific days today in your testimony without talking about cherry wounded foot, leave that aside, are those experiences of the general kind that you have and observations that you make on a routine basis during your life at Whiteclay?
For the most part, yes, I would exclude the knife fight. That is not necessarily a common occurrence.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you.
Mr. Newman, when did you move to Whiteclay?
I moved to Whiteclay on May 25th of 2015.
Had you ever been there prior?
Yes, on a short-term mission trip for a short visit when I was on an internship in a different town an hour away, and then for a 2-month internship with Bruce and Marcia.
So you spent a 2-month internship in Whiteclay? And is that with Mr. and Mrs. LaFleur? Is that who you're referring to?
Bonfleur, yes.
Bonfleur, sorry. Apologize.
Could you spell that?
It's Bonfleur.
So you got 2 months experience there plus the time that you lived there.
Yes,
So comes up to about the 2 years you're talking about, is that fair?
yes.
Have these issues that Mr. Domino just asked you about, that you described as routine, been that way the whole time that you've been there?
I would say yes.
So nothing's changed in that regard?
Yes.
Have the stores that these retailers sell beer out of remained in the same spot?
Yes, they have.
And to your knowledge, they're seeking renewal of a license in the same spot?
Yes.
Have you observed anything about the physical locations of the stores that you would characterize as unsuitable for the sale of alcohol?
The location next to the border, I would consider as being
I'm
unsuitable.
not talking about the societal issues, I'm just talking about the physical aspect of the building. Is it suitable for the sale of alcohol?
Once again, I have not been inside all of the buildings, but to my knowledge, yes.
Have you been in any of them?
I have been, yes, I have.
Which ones have you been in?
I've briefly been in Arrowhead Inn, State Line, and Jumping Eagles.
And in all of those places, the beer is very well secured, true? It's behind the counter.
I believe so.
The person is not able to walk in and pick up a beer out of the cooler, right?
I haven't really gotten to pay attention much to the buildings inside.
So you weren't in there very much.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your dates here that you spoke with Mr. Dahman about. Was it March 29th? And did I have that date right? I believe that was the date you were describing a wound that you were taking care of.
Yes, it is.
Did you observe this knife fight?
I did not.
I got a little confused because you were talking about a knife fight and then you talked about having bandaged the wound the day before.
Yes, the knife fight had happened. Let me make sure I go through my notes and answer accurately. Yes, the knife fight had occurred on March 27th in front of Arrowhead Inn. On the 28th, I had bandaged that wound, and on the 29th, I went to rebandage that wound.
So you didn't observe this knife fight?
No.
Did you report it to police when you learned about it?
I did not.
You described some other activity, I believe, on April 2nd.
Yes.
What was that again?
That was,
Oh, that was the gentleman that walked into Jumping Eagle Inn? Is that right?
I believe on the second, the one I had was when the woman attempted to run over the street person.
Did you report that to police?
I did not.
You also spoke of a gentleman getting out of the car and going into the Jumping Eagle Inn.
Yes.
Did you interact with that gentleman at all?
No.
You didn't smell any alcohol on him?
I was not close enough.
You didn't see any alcohol in his hand when he got out of the van?
No.
Didn't see any alcohol in the van?
No.
And you just made observations of him standing in Jumping Eagle Inn and buying a single beer?
I believe there were more than one beer in the bag, and it was not just standing, it was him staggering in, and the kind of movements inside.
Which you assumed without knowing to be the effects of alcohol?
Yes.
Did you do anything to report that to the police?
I did not report it.
Did you report anything to the Liquor Commission that you thought there was a violation of the liquor laws
No.
before, when it happened?
No.
Have you ever reported any of these retailers to law enforcement for a violation of the law?
I have not.
Have you ever reported any of them to the Liquor Commission for a violation of the law?
I have not.
This murder, you indicated you were gone on a trip.
Yes.
So you weren't there when the murder occurred?
That's correct.
Are you aware that this person did not die at the scene of the murder?
I don't think I can speak to that.
Are you aware that she died several days later in a hospital in Rapid City?
Yes, I am aware of that.
Is it your contention then that no law enforcement ever responded when the events that led to her death happened?
It is my contention that the thorough investigation did not occur until about a month later.
And do you have any experience in law enforcement?
I do not.
You don't have any idea whether that, when the timing of the investigation happened, whether that compromised the investigation in any way, do you?
Repeat the question, please.
You don't have any information which would suggest that the timing of the investigation by the individuals, the police that you saw, in any way compromised the investigation?
The information that I would have is the locations that I had heard behind the buildings and stuff are regular places for people to urinate and defecate where they can't be seen, and I believe that that would compromise the ability to investigate the scene.
Your implication here is that there was bad police work done, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
And that bad police work was done by the Nebraska State Patrol, right?
Yes.
Is it your contention that either the Nebraska State Patrol or the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office are not regularly in Whiteclay?
Yes.
Are you aware that the Nebraska State Patrol was in Whiteclay in 2016 with uniformed officers for over 374 hours?
I'm not aware of those statistics.
You didn't see them there, any of those 374 hours?
I've seen them on some of those.
Are you aware that the Nebraska State Patrol was in Whiteclay with investigative hours exceeding 170? That would be a non-uniformed plainclothes officer.
I am not.
Is it your contention that the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office doesn't go there?
It is not my contention.
Is it your contention that arrests aren't made in Whiteclay?
It is my contention that they are rarer than they should be.
aware that over a 6-week period, the Nebraska State Patrol made 498 enforcement contacts in Whiteclay? Were you aware that resulting from those enforcement contacts, there were 8 open container violations?
I have not heard that.
5 drinking on public property violations?
I was not aware of those.
5 DUI arrests?
Once again, I haven't seen these.
7 drug violation arrests?
No.
12 suspended drivers? 2 concealed weapons?
No.
27 arrests on active warrants?
No.
So it's safe to say that your observations of the law enforcement activity in Whiteclay are pretty limited, right?
Yeah, I'm only on the streets for so many hours a day, and the rest can only be seen by the time I spend driving through or on the premises of Lakota Hope.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. I don't have anything further.
Any questions for the commissioners for Mr. Newman?
I don't.
Bruce? I have one question. Commissioner observation. You mentioned an opportunity where you watched someone that you thought was was intoxicated being issued.
Yes.
Have you ever observed that in other instances?
Several others.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, Mr. Newman. You mentioned urination and defecation. You see that happen in public view on the streets of Whiteclay
Regularly.
daily?
Say that again?
Daily,
Daily.
by multiple persons?
I would say I don't observe it by multiple people daily, but yes, multiple different individuals.
You observe and smell the consequences? Intoxicated persons?
Yes.
No object on foundation.
I'm over reliabilities, stating he's out there 4 mornings a week, you can testify to his observations.
No further questions.
Mr. Bob, you have a question?
How many people, on average, say summertime, good weather time, who are on the streets, the street people?
I would say about 15 to 50 on a given day.
How about in the wintertime?
In the wintertime, it really depends on the weather. You can have a full summer crowd when it's nice and sunny out. When it dropped to 20 below, finally everyone on the streets did clear out for those few days.
Okay. Just to clarify, when your observations in the morning, a lot of the crowd is dependent upon the local weather at the time. So it was really hot there, and out there, it was really cold and out there. It was nice, and you see how a larger crowd.
Yes, it is largely dependent on the weather.
Because we can get July out there can be 108, which is almost as bad as 20 degrees. So I just want to make sure that the crowd is based primarily on weather.
Yes, unfortunately, in the summer, many do not have quite the same sense, and so a lot of them do pass out in very hot temperatures, in a concrete surrounding.
Any further questions based on my inquiry?
No, thank you.
How do you define street people?
These are the people who would spend their time drinking in Whiteclay, sometimes for a day, sometimes for a more long-term stint.
They don't live on the streets.
There are several who live behind the buildings or sleep behind the buildings, several that sleep in Camp Justice that was talked about earlier. There are quite a few who do not go home at night and stay in Whiteclay.
They're not homeless, though, because you said they just don't go home, right?
In Lakota culture, it is true that oftentimes, family members are very generous and open their homes, but as was said earlier, the situation with alcohol does keep many of these men from being able to go back to their homes.
I'm going to ask you the question. The question was, they may have homes, they may not be choosing to utilize them at the time, and they're staying over, and that's what you observed, correct? You don't know what you don't know the actual where they live or what they live, their home situation at all times. You're observing, just make sure I can restate it clearly, that at times people will spend the night in Whiteclay, but you don't know, you have no personal observation on what their home status is.
I know some of their families, and some of them will not allow them home because of their drinking, but by and large, yes, for most of them, I do not know their home statuses, and many of them do have the option to go back to homes.
I have one follow-up to Commissioner Bailey's question of you about observing other people purchasing beer while intoxicated. Do you recall that question?
Yes, I do.
And you stated that you've observed that several times.
Yes.
Have you ever called the police?
I have not.
Have you ever reported that to the commission?
I have not.
On any of those occasions, did you actually investigate to determine whether the person was actually intoxicated?
In a number of those cases, I talked to the intoxicated person before they entered into the beer store.
How many?
I have seen so many incidences, I don't think I could count all of them.
Well, you described one originally, then Commissioner Bailey asked you a question, and you said several or something like that. And now it's so many you can't count? Is that
I'm saying that's more than I can keep track of. If I had written each one down, I could probably go through and count.
Why haven't you called the police?
The times that I have called the police, they have done nothing to resolve the problems.
Well, this is a liquor commission violation, and you didn't call the liquor commission either, did you?
I did not.
Why did you do that?
To be honest, I didn't really feel that they would do anything of consequence.
And that's based on your limited observation of law enforcement in Whiteclay. True?
Yes, it is.
I don't have anything else.
I just have one brief question, just to make sure, and I apologize for going out of order on here. When you're out in the morning, what time in the morning do you start?
It can range. I like the window of 9 to 10 because you're getting to the point where people are more or less over their hangovers, but they haven't gotten severely intoxicated for the most part.
So at 9 or 10, are people already starting to drink on the streets at that time in your observation?
Definitely.
And then as the day goes further on, you observe more consumption, and they, as you said, they would become more intoxicated. That's your observation?
Yes.
You stated earlier that sometimes you don't feel safe, especially at night. Is it because of the level of intoxication that you're seeing sort of go up throughout the day?
Yes,
Or what's
it is.
your, okay. I just want to be sure you're I mean, you said that earlier, just make sure it's clear that you are seeing them out there. You're also seeing people right at the beginning where they're not consuming at all.
I don't know that I necessarily see them at a point where they're not consuming at all. Hardly ever, because I'm usually not up that early.
Okay.
What time do the stores open in the morning?
I do not know.
Any questions, Ms. Malone?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, your excuse me. Next witness, Mr. Donald.
Judy Goshkabash, she will be brief.
Morning, Mr. Goshkabash. Could you please raise your hands?
Just for the testimony about giving you the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, self you got. I do. Please state, spell your name.
My name is Judy Goshkabash, Judigaishkabios.
What is your occupation?
I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs.
And is that a state agency?
That is a non-code state agency.
And is it a state agency that's funded by appropriations of the Nebraska legislature?
Yes, it is.
And does your commission have programs designed to serve Native people?
Yes, we do.
Do those programs include programs in alcohol education?
Yes, we do.
Do you, at your agency, therefore implement and execute a policy of the state that's designed to assist Native people in avoiding the dangers of alcohol to them?
Yes, we do. Our statutory mission is to do all things which it may determine to enhance the cause of Indian rights and to develop solutions to problems common to all Nebraska Indians. And alcohol addiction is one of those problems that our tribes have determined is a high priority. So we have a variety of programs that include the education on that, and also we are trying to improve the health outcomes for our people and to help empower our young people to not go down that road. So we have summer youth leadership academies, and we are trying to give our young Indian people skill sets so that they can have a better life and have equality in all areas that include housing, employment, education, health care, economic development, and human civil rights within Nebraska. And we do that. Our agency accomplishes that through advocacy, education, and promotion of legislation and programs that I have just described.
Just a couple more questions. First of all, does your service include Lakota people who reside in Nebraska?
Yes, it does. We are tasked through our commission agency statutes that we serve all Indian people in the state of Nebraska. We have 14 Indian commissioners in the state, and we have 4 ex officio tribes, the Pawnee, the Oglala Sioux, the Iowa, Sac and Fox. And currently, Tiger Brown Bull is the ex officio representative of the Oglala Sioux. So we serve not only enrolled members of our 4 headquarter tribes, but any Indian person that is in the state of Nebraska, we are compelled to advocate for.
So you mentioned a person by name, Tiger Brown Bull, is that correct?
Yes.
And he is actually a member of the commission itself?
He's an ex officio that was recently appointed by the Oglala Sioux.
And is he actually a resident of South Dakota that serves as an ex officio member of the commission?
Yes, he does, because they have land that extends into Nebraska, and it's the same for the other tribes. The Iowa, Sac and Fox on the Kansas border, they have representation.
And does your service responsibility of the commission extend to Native persons from other states who are in Nebraska on a transitional or temporary basis?
Absolutely.
A personal question, are you yourself a Native American?
Yes, I'm an enrolled member of the Ponca tribe in Nebraska.
I have no further questions, thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Senator.
Does your jurisdiction include the Omaha tribe?
The Omaha tribe are represented on our board with 2 commissioners, and we advocate and serve in all these areas for all Omaha tribal members.
And are you aware of the case called Nebraska versus Parker, which appeared in the United States Supreme Court last year, in which the state of Nebraska advocated that liquor retailers licensed by this commission be allowed to continue to sell alcohol without a tax imposed by the Omaha tribe?
Yes, I am aware of that case.
And did I state that accurately then, that the Omaha tribe passed a tax on liquor sales, is that right?
Objection irrelevant.
She's talking about the policy of the state of Nebraska.
I'm going to overrule the objection. She can talk about it, but I'm also aware of I'm also aware of the litigation. So,
Could you repeat the question?
Did I state that accurately, that the genesis of that case was the Omaha tribe passing an ordinance or regulation within their tribe that taxed liquor and alcohol sales within the borders of their reservation?
I guess I would say I'm not certain, but the Omaha tribe is a sovereign nation within the state of Nebraska, and they have sovereign rights to taxation. That's their policy for the tribe.
And what the state of Nebraska did in that case was intervene in a case and argue that the liquor retailer should not have to pay a tax to the tribe, despite the fact that they were on reservation, right?
I'm not sure that I can answer that question.
Okay. I don't have anything further.
Any questions from Mr. Bachelor? Any redirect?
No.
Any junior?
This witness be excused.
Yeah, she may be excused. But I know executive directors of non-code agencies are very busy people, so she may be excused.
We call John Maish. I didn't assume I should go ahead.
No, you're absolutely wrong.
Mr. Maish, I want you to...
Well, I got to swear better.
Do you swear
Now
the
you are
testimony-
jumping.
Do you swear the testimony about to give you the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Did you spell your name yet, sir?
No.
Do that, please.
It's M as in Mary, A-I-S-C-H.
And your first name is?
John, J-O-H-N.
Mr. Maish, I want to cover your credentials very briefly and then just talk about some statistical work you've done with data that you've collected and you finished, so we'll be brief. Is that all right with you? Would you generally just simply introduce yourself to the commission in terms of your profession, your geography, and your work?
I'm not sure anything needs to be done, only because he's been for us so many
Very well.
I think for the record, very briefly.
If you keep it at, keep it at one very short paragraph.
Thank you.
And I'll cut you off if it's a long paragraph.
Keep it short.
He doesn't know.
Lived in Nebraska from 1972 to 1992. Attended law school, graduated from Midland Lutheran College in Fremont. Graduated from the University of Tulsa Law School in 1995. I've worked as an assistant attorney general in the state of Oklahoma, a private practice, and then the general counsel for the Oklahoma ABLE Commission, which is a counterpart to this Liquor Control Commission. ABLE stands for the Alcoholic Beverage Laws Enforcement Commission. From 2008 to 2012, and I currently serve as an assistant professor at the University of Central Oklahoma.
Not trying to be disrespectful.
No, we've met.
Mr. Maish, among other things that I want to cover with you, is to be sure that we have some census data about Sheridan County in the record. At my request, did you look at the U.S. Census Bureau quick facts for Sheridan County exhibits 139 and 140, please? And just confirm that they are data from that source.
Okay, yes, I'm looking at the Exhibit 139. It appears to be United States Census data for Sheridan County.
And 140.
140, American Fact Finder, profile of general demographic characteristics for Sheridan County.
I offer those to exhibits.
I couldn't hear say foundation of values.
I'm going to overrule the U.S. Special U.S. Census Bureau that has a government record that's kept just trying to show the census data. That covers all of our moving protection and the debits.
Now, if I could, would you take a look for me, please, at Exhibit 143? Can you identify very briefly what that is, please?
Yes, Exhibit 143 appears to be data that I collected as a result of an open record request from the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission. I would refer to it perhaps as a gallonage report. It's showing the amount of gallons of spirits, wine, and beer as reported, I believe, by the licensed distributors of the state to various on and off-premise licensees in roughly 8 different communities, including Sheridan County, Dawes County, and Cherry County.
In Nebraska?
That is correct.
And so is the the underlying data from this commission and then compiled in a presentation format by you?
That is correct.
All right, I'll offer Exhibit 143.
Objection on hearsay foundation and relevance.
Overruled. I mean, it's the commission, he took a coalition of commission data, which we keep as part of our normal tax records. It's data, it's record, they're normally and frequently used by the commission, so I will overrule it and accept the evidence when wrong.
Would you look at Exhibit 144?
Yes.
What is this?
I believe 144, it appears to be it's a compilation of traffic counts.
And is this data that you gathered through public records requests?
Yes, perhaps in part, but also just looking on the website of the state of Nebraska. Traffic counts for roughly 5 different highways traveling from South Dakota into various cities or counties within the state of northwestern Nebraska.
Did you then compile that data from the state of Nebraska's website?
Yes, sir.
And put it in a summary presentation format?
Yes, sir.
Did you also add the graphs that simply portray that data graphically?
Yes, sir.
I'll offer Exhibit 144.
Objection on hearsay foundation and relevance.
Overruled.
Would you look at Exhibit 144?
Exhibit 144, are you offering 144 issue?
I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's all right.
Exhibit 147, please, would you look at that? And while we're at it, to make it simpler, would you take a look, when you finish looking at 147, would you look at Exhibits 148, 149, 150, 151, and 152, and 153?
Yes, sir. I believe that Exhibit 147 is a compilation of or a summary of dispatch logs from Sheridan County Sheriff's Office that I received through an open records request. It's a summary of calls made to the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office in the month of April of 2015. That is Exhibit 147.
Is Exhibit 150 the underlying data received from the Sheriff's Office for that month and year?
That is correct.
All right. What is Exhibit 148?
148 appears to be the dispatch log itself from April 1st of 2014 from the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office.
Data you received in the same manner?
Correct.
149, that exhibit is what?
Exhibit 149 appears to be Sheriff's dispatch logs from Sheridan County for August 1st of 2014.
And 151, please, sir?
Exhibit 151, Sheriff dispatch logs from Sheridan County, August 1st of 2015.
Exhibit 152 is what?
This is a compilation of the calls that came into Sheridan County Sheriff's Office regarding calls about Whiteclay for the month of April of 2016.
And what is Exhibit 153? Oh, pardon me, on 152, is the compilation accompanied by the data in a single exhibit?
Yes, the first 3 pages, front and back, are the summary, and the subsequent pages are the dispatch log itself for April of 2016.
What is Exhibit 153?
Exhibit 153 is the Sheriff dispatch log for Sheridan County, August 1st of 2016.
All this data in these exhibits 147 through 153 all retrieved in the same manner and compiled to the extent it's compilations by you in the manner that you described?
Correct, at different times, but open record requests to the Sheriff's Office responded to by the County Attorney for Sheridan County.
I offer exhibits 147 through 153.
Objection, Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
I have objections to 147 through